Welcome to Rejected Religion Spotlight. I'm Stephanie Shea. This is a special extra audio interview with my guest, Dr. David Kim. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks for having me. I hope this interview goes very well today with a particular topic.
Yes, I'm very eager to talk to you about space and astronauts and religion. So you have a very interesting article that I'd like to discuss with you today. But before we start with the article, I wanted to ask you something else, a different topic, but I think you would know a lot about it. In a previous interview that I did for my platform with David Metcalf, we talked a little bit about the phenomenon known as the overview effect and its implications for people. And I would love to explore this further with you today. Could you first explain the term's origins and what the term is referring to, and also talk about how people describe this experience?
Yeah, I think, Stephanie, that's a very good question. Also, it's a lot of astronauts, whenever first time they travel to space, and the first word is very important, as like Neil Armstrong did. For them, it's a mixing up with the emotion as well as also what they believe, before they be in a space. Also, sometimes it actually implicates there's a religious background if they had such an idea or some kind of curiosity about the cosmology. So in that way, many people has their own way of express when they are in space first time. Religious people or generally Western culture might explain about the amazing perspective of God. Also, some people might be trying to interpret their own religious or personal impression from a non-religious background, but still common terms they using is marvelous. Some other words they use is I never experienced such that feeling now. I also some people coming from Catholic background, they might say the universe is the place God actually exists beyond our understanding. So that is one of the expression, even one of the popes said before.
Yes, I find this to be a very interesting idea because most people don't have that opportunity to be out in space and looking down on the planet. So I can imagine that would have a lot of very deep and meaningful and very overwhelming reactions for people when they see that. And it also carries profound philosophical implications as well. And I think that the accounts that I have read, people talk about how it changes their perspectives on their existence, their identity, their ethics, and their spirituality, as you mentioned before, if they already have a religious background. But even if they didn't, that it might change their way of looking at religion or spirituality. I was wondering if you could expand more on these influences and how they play out for experiencers. Do you know of any people who might have been an atheist, for example, and had then a very profound experience that made them look differently at their life when they come back to Earth?
Yeah, that's another very good question. Whenever they be there first time, most of people has a feeling of awe, wonders, and try to express what they feel based on the emotions. As you mentioned, then it's sort of open up the new world for them, a new world of understanding about cosmology. So as you mentioned about the existence, why the human exists. So those questions might bring to them in the base of they are part of the universe. Also, their existence is important as they see the universe is very wide and that is not something human or scientist can create. So in that way, there's importance of existence is becoming another important part. And there's identity also. They might be used to think about themselves or one self-centered understanding of the world. But once they are out there, in terms of philosophical way, they are not thinking anymore by their own self, but looking at as a representative of the humanities. So that identity is becoming more public. Also, ethnic-wise, it's become a more multi-ethnic perspective rather than their own single ethnic background. If somebody coming from ESA, European Union Space Agency, they're not only thinking about European perspective, they might think about as humans on Earth. Or even from NASA astronauts, they might think not only American, but they represent humanities on Earth. So the boundary of the ethnicity is also crossing, extending their worldview as well. Spirituality, we might talk a little bit more later, but also that part can be challenged as well based on what they used to have it, but the new world challenging their perspective also crossing the border.
It sounds like it's a positive change for many people. So I don't think there are any
Mm,
negative effects that this has had. So, yeah, I guess this is a good
yeah.
thing. Do you know of any groups or more official organizations that try to implement these newfound perspectives on humanity and inclusiveness and feeling more as one people or one, I guess, one world? Because I would imagine that after their trip, if they have more of a earth-based
Yeah.
perspective, that might change how they interact with not just in their daily life, but also maybe in their work environment or in their political environment. Are there any groups that have
Mm.
arisen out of this profound experience?
Yes, so far, or we can't just like clearly say some certain groups are interesting, but it's a very common phenomenon among the regional area of the groups. Sort of a common issues nowadays, climate change and some other environmental protection and some common issues among the people, among the society. So in that perspective, they see there is common purpose that humanity have to unite it together. Sort of a unity and a harmony is kind of a common terms people try to using across the political issues. If you are in space, there is no political issue between Russians and the Americans, but only things happening here. That can be a very recommendable structure working as a part of the humanity rather than single national's purpose or benefit. That could be good reasons, but nothing specially organized. Also, in this perspective, United Nations also doesn't play that much in more like one particular nation or some kind of their groups of reason they do work together, but it's still very beginning stage.
I see. Well, hopefully there can be some more developments in that area that would help to encourage the ideas of working together, cooperation, and
Mm.
thinking of living here on the earth as a group effort instead of having factions where you're fighting each other. That would be on a macro scale and also on a micro scale as well. While the overview effect has profound consequences for many, as we just talked about, it would seem that long term space travel naturally would present people with a new set of challenges. And your article entitled Mars Space Exploration and Astronautical Religion in Human Research History Psychological Countermeasures of Long Term Astronauts from 2022 in the journal Aerospace discusses, among other things, how space travel to the planet Mars is now a real possibility. I did not know that until I read your article, so this is very interesting. You also talk about how this raises questions about the mental health safety measures that would need to exist in order to protect the astronauts. So I was hoping that you could address the issues at play for the astronauts at this time.
This is a very important part. My article just described a little bit about my argument in terms of the safety of the astronaut for the long space travel, including Mars missions. That will be slightly different than a short-term mission going to the Earth orbit or ISS, which they normally take 3 to 6 months, or short mission will be less than 10 days, less than 2 weeks. But long term to Mars, it takes a minimum 2.5 years to 3 years. being in a spaceship with the limited people or with the strangers. So how they can keep that one scientifically, space scientifically or space technologically, they will prepare all the necessary facilities. But the things they can't handle is about the astronaut health. There are major hazards for astronaut being in space. We normally call five major hazards. One is as you know, it's a high radiation. So radiation, it actually make a lot of conditions very narrow for humans. The modern technology has some ability to protect the humans or astronauts in space from the radiation. If you think about radiation on Earth, where we're living in your office and my office will be number one. We can say level one, but being in space, the radiation would be huge. Maybe I would say, I can't say exact number. It will be 3,000 to 7,000
Oh, wow.
times higher. So that means it's not easy because radiation, space medical perspective bring a lot of problems for human body.
Yeah.
That's one hazard. Second one is microgravity or zero gravity. So when astronauts are standing on the moon, they can jump very high. They can go very far. That's because of the gravity. Earth gravity is something 6.5. So you can't run that fast. But if we have a zero gravity, you can literally fly. But that sounds good. But health-wise, being in zero gravity bring a lot of medical issues, especially human bones, lose the bones and some other things. So human astronaut in space, they have to do daily exercise more than 2.5 hours a day to keep those health condition all other perspective. And they have another, that's scientifically, scientists are able to cover so far by technology now. But for the long-term mission, that's something NASA or scientists can't figure out is about isolation or confinement or called distance from the Earth. These three major of five hazards, it's still NASA and the ESA, European Space Agency, or Russians, Chinese, and Indians, they are working on how we can reduce risk level from such this isolation and confinement and distance from the Earth. So let me handle a little bit about the distance from the Earth, what it means. That means as they travel very fast speed, the mobile phone now, they have a 4G or 5G.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah. So when we travel to space, the spaceship travel that fast, 5G speed. So that means when the astronauts want to talk to the NASA Houston, it takes time. It's not like an email. It takes 1 second. You send it to me, come to me 1 second. It takes about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then they have to discuss and then return. It normally takes 1 hour to communicate.
Yeah.
So that will be a big trouble in emergency situation. That's distance weakness. But as a human, during the pandemic, a lot of people being isolated or in a quarantine stops, 2 weeks quarantine in the one room stop. After that, a lot of people crying about the mental disorder, mental health.
Yeah.
Being in isolate in space for long travel to Mars, it takes 3 years.
Yeah.
Literally, if they stay in the spaceship 3 years, it's just something mentally we have to keep the mental health well. But scientists hasn't figured out that problem because we're not a robot.
Right.
They can't program us. Yeah. So that's something we have to figure out, the maintaining well-being, mental well-being. So that's issues we need to develop, and those things bringing a lot of fear, also anxiety, and those sort of uncertainty will actually make risk situation higher. for that, the success of mission will be very dangerous.
Right. Well, there's a lot of factors that have to be, of course, physical factors that are important to address. But yes, the isolation in a small space. I think we all have had situations where we're traveling with people, with our family, with our friends, people that we love and care for, and we're still getting very annoyed with them because they're doing something and we're all traveling together and our patience wears thin and we get irritable and we have little arguments with each other. But in space, you
Yeah.
can't leave. You have to stay there. You can't
Yeah.
leave. So this is a lighthearted example, of course, that, of little minor differences that we have with each other. But for astronauts, I could imagine that this is a very serious issue.
Mm.
If mental health breaks down and there's no way to deal with this and to offer relief for people who might be suffering from the isolation or whatever other issue might be at hand, that could be a really serious issue. So looking back in history of space travel, in general, what role did religion or religious beliefs play for astronauts? You mentioned that of course, the space travel in the past was it wasn't long term. Maybe these were shorter trips. But in your
Mm.
article, you talked about how religion was, for some people, an important component in the process of preparing for and the execution of space travel. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that. How has religion been used in the past for astronauts?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. If you have a look at space history, in that space history perspective, we can check astronaut background. When the space program started from early 1950s and 60s, it's more like not a human test experiment, but animals being tested. It. But when the Apollo series coming, late 60s and 1970s, when the Apollo series started, a lot of American NASA astronauts coming from they not officially announce it, but in terms of personal sphere, lots of astronauts coming from Christian background, Protestant background, but it actually has been changed into 1990 and 2000. It come from the one particular denomination. If we consider Russian astronaut, it's very predominant Russian Orthodox background. In that way, Russian government and Russian Orthodox, they have official cooperation for space project. In that way, Russian Orthodox performed the ritual before the launch. And even a lot of Russian astronauts, they have a lot of symbolic items in the space when they actually living. A lot of the picture of the saint. So it's very visible compared to American NASA people. So that's Americans today, also Catholics do that. Catholic, some of from 2000s, a lot of the Catholics and the Jewish people were also traveling to space. They were also carrying personal religious items, Bibles. Do you actually know there is two Bibles on the moon at the moment?
I did not know that.
Yeah, so that's
Amazing.
something happens in 1970s when the American astronauts traveling there. So a lot of the Catholic astronauts traveling, they take items as well, and the Jewish people even carrying a scroll, micro Torah in a micro way, and then also a lot of Jewish items. Recently, also first female Islam astronauts also traveling. So it's a very multicultural astronauts coming from all different backgrounds. That actually talking about not only multi-religious but also multi-linguistic, multi-ethnic. So category of the astronaut is very diverse and they're very pluralistic as well.
Yes. I was also wondering about whether or not in the past, if there was any resistance or pushback from the scientific community against the astronauts being very outwardly religious in this way. Did that interfere with the preparations for space travel? Were people saying, we don't need religion, this is not necessary? Or was it maybe very accepted? I was just curious as to if you know what the attitudes were from the scientific community.
I think that's very important questions. NASA or Russia or ESA, they not officially announce religious activity, but the issues I'm talking about, it's about personal sphere.
Okay.
When astronauts are in the space, they still run the 24 hours routine, 8 hours working, 8 hours private time, and then 8 hours of sleeping. So private times, astronauts individually do whatever they want, including personal belief activities as well. As long as it doesn't disturb the system operation, they are allowed, and that's why they are allowed to take all personal, not only personal books, but also religious items as well. I'm sure most of the astronaut has a basic level of understanding and professionalism. They not go crossing each other, question religion and bit professionalism. So far, nothing happens. But in the future, if we develop the space tourism, and then normal citizens will go there, that will become a little bit a sensitive part that they have to follow the regulations.
Yes, of course. That is also an issue that would have to be dealt with at that point. As we talked about before, the challenges that are presented with astronauts and long-term space travel, you write that at this point, solutions for the diverse list of risk and issues, quote, have remained in the ambiguous stage, end quote, and you offer up an option of implementing, quote, an astronautical religion, end quote, as a possible countermeasure for these challenges. So, would you first please explain what is meant with astronautical religion in this context?
Yeah, the term astronautical religion, that baby, as long as I know the one I actually start using, that means generally kind of not one particular religious organization, but in terms of the umbrella term, astronauts during the space traveling, they do keep personal belief, including religious behavior or some other spiritual behavior. That's sort of I would try to cover. So that's the reason, sort of all different kind of religions. So it's a very umbrella terms. If I developed a little bit more about the astronautical religion, what it means. So because the space travel to Mars, it's a long time. They have to set the daily routine in the space community. So in the space community, they eat the breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then do business. And the private time, they can have own things. But also in terms of a community, if religious people similar background, they can conduct a service or prayer or reading the scripture together, or in terms of the spirituality, meditation or yoga, those things can be conducted in a community form. That's something including also astronautical religion. Also, further I go, I can say a necessity of space chaplaincy. If we have more capacity, among the number of the astronaut at the moment, the first priority of the astronaut should be the commander, also a pilot, also a payload, and then next one we should have a scientist. But those scientists, among them, I will say agricultural scientists for food. We need food for that.
Yeah.
And then some other specialists. And then one of the choice I would say is chaplain, especially for the like a civilization or colonialization of the Mars. We need that kind of a person, a mentor. He can play the mentorship of the astronaut.
Yes. So in this case, we're talking about colonization of Mars, but for the travelers themselves as they travel to Mars, what challenges would this implementation of a type of astronautical religion, what challenges would this help to mitigate or prevent as they are traveling during their long journey to Mars? How is this helping them?
The being isolated is the main thing, and also what they can do during the private times. During the private activity of the private time actually can affect during the business time when they actually professionally perform. So in that way, this religious activity or religious hobby stuffs can increase the safety level, especially in emergency situation. In emergency situation, in normal situation, they follow the normal procedures. But when something happening unexpected, someone needs a sacrifice. For example, one of the astronauts voluntarily have to go out of space, fix the problem, but unfortunately he might not have enough oxygen to come back to the spaceship. Then someone have to go there. The benefit of the religious this behavior and actually increasing self-sacrifice rate.
Okay.
So they can volunteer for other people. I'm saying positive way. So people who has a religious behavior might have a more sacrificial behavior for other people in emergency situation. So in that way, how we handle emergency situation that actually give more confidence for this if more people are there. That's one aspect. But there are many other aspects in terms of reducing the risk in space community. In the case of the addiction, if other astronaut has some kind of a drug addiction, sexual addiction, or drinking addiction, smoking addictions, this will make it very dangerous during the space time in emergency situation more. Also, and kind of trauma. People who has formerly had a trauma, family before they traveled 1 year before father passed away or mother passed away or daughter passed away, those traumas will be under the surface. But in emergency situation, those reactions will come out and that make really dangerous stuff. So those potential element of the danger may not be controlled. People who have such that religious background, I'm talking about only positive part, there will be also negative, but also, so those scientifically can't prove it. They can't have a data. Scientists can't have a data of those behavior change, but there is the fact that scientists can have a confidence in those people's behavior. They can trust more in those people's morality and also some other ethical perspective.
Right.
So that's sort of I try to improve it, showing the power of the religiosity in general.
Yes. So this helps them to, I guess, as you just said, ethically, morally relate to emergency situations or relate to any type of stress-inducing situation in a generally a more balanced way. I guess we could say that it's beneficial also to the health of the astronaut themselves. It helps them to have some type of balance and harmony within their own experience and within their own self, that they also can help other people in that sense and help in crisis situations as well. So yeah, I guess I can see how the data would show that this might be the case, although you do mention that atheists or irreligious astronauts would not be excluded, of course, from potential teams. And I thought this was also interesting that you talked about the terms religion and spirituality, of course, can be defined differently. You note in your article that we could consider religion as a community-based belief system and spirituality as individually based belief systems. So in this way, a person who might say, well, I'm not religious, but I am spiritual, that, they could still hold beliefs that could be beneficial to the ideas that are put forth in the astronautical religion. Because I think what you were trying to say in your article is that atheists and irreligious people can still be moral and ethical too. It doesn't mean that they don't have any morals or ethics, of course, But the idea behind this is that it's aiming to promote behaviors that facilitate the safety and the security of the team. So you mentioned that it might be beneficial. You gave some examples in your article that it might be beneficial for people of the same religion or same practice to travel together instead of mixing religious beliefs and practices together in a team. Could you talk more about that?
This is also a very important perspective for the long-term space travel. Who is your partner and what their background is a very important part. One of my recent research is focusing on the astronaut selection process. Who can be the candidate? That is also relevant with this topic. So what I say is, as I mentioned before, religiosity actually has connection with attitude of the positivity, solitude, and the endurance, courage, and an optimistic hopes. And based on that one, if we divided religion and spirituality, some people, as you mentioned, can be religious, but some people can be only spiritual. So that way, atheists can be a little bit in between. But what I say is, if I say one example, recently 2 astronauts just returned from the space from emergency situation, Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams, one male and one female. The Butch Wilmore, did you know he's a Baptist church elder?
No, did not know that.
Okay. 2 astronauts who were in space through the emergency situation, they supposed to be there 10 days, but they've been there 8 months.
Oh,
How they could go through that 8 months, an unexpected plan, I see the power of there's religiosity. That's one perspective. On this topic, we're not talking about STEM perspective, science, technology. I'm talking about humanistic perspective,
right.
how they keep the safety.
Yeah.
The both of them are very strong religious. And I wouldn't say religious, but Wilmore, he was very religious. What I'm saying is, as he was elder of the Baptist church, when he have a free time, when he actually attend the church service in space through the internet, he also visit his member through the communication while he was in space. So he was very religiously conducting, even though his situation being in space conducted unknown when he's able to come back. So in that way, his private time was very productive. So when he actually started business professionalism in space operation, he had no problems. Of course, a lot of obstacles as well, but at least he was able to maintain. Second one, the female Sunny Williams, she's come from a Hindu background. For me, she is more a spiritual Hindu follows. She's not attending regular things, but generally she follows the pattern of the Hindu activity, especially whenever she feels uncomfortable. In particular, when she launched the rocket, she putting Hindu music on she's listening to trying to calm down. So those activities in terms of spirituality, they do. So slightly different, both of them, Butch and the Sunni, but it's a very important religion was playing, or spirituality was playing in a very significant part in terms of what we call risk management or safety management.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine that for people who are under such physical and mental strain, I mean, because this is a stressful job, of course, that these people are doing, that something like mantras, meditation, any other type of prayer or, whatever types of practices that different religious traditions uphold, or spiritual traditions in this case, that this could be very beneficial for the people to help keep them balanced and feeling in harmony with the people that they're with, feeling calm, centered, I mean, if you're traveling with someone who is a Bodavista, then you're thinking, oh, this person is very loving and compassionate and caring
Yeah,
person. So,
yeah, that's right.
yeah, I can see how this would be very helpful for people, and also in very stressful crisis situations, that this can offer them some type of solace and a grounding as well to keep them centered and functioning in a positive way. So, yeah, I think this is a very
Yeah.
interesting thing that I didn't know anything about astronautical religion. So I was very happy to read your article and to think about this. And do you know, is this still in development? Are they still thinking about different options or how this would take shape? Or do they actually have something already in place that they are working with? Can you talk more about that?
This is a very, very new idea in
Okay.
space science.
Okay.
So I was doing research of this one in Harvard in 2023 and 2024.
Okay.
And then next year, 2026 and 27, I will visit Harvard Divinity again, continue this research. In the space science, this is still new area
Okay.
because NASA and the Johnson Space Center, they have only scientists and engineers. They
Right.
don't have a humanitarian scholars. So
Right.
I'm the kind of the I don't know proud it, but it is a pioneer of this subject of the method. This is one of the method for the well-being of the astronaut and for the NASA's. And generally, they have a lot of recreational activities are encouraged and developed to mitigate such boring space life.
Mm.
You probably know people can do individual hobbies and then physical activities, listening music, also famous Netflix movies they can keep following, reading books and stuff. Also, the VI and AI entertainment.
Yeah.
So those things can be used during the private times.
Yeah.
But are they going to be good enough? My
Mm.
question is for ISS, International Space Station, may be good enough for staying there 6 months, but for deep space mission to Mars over 3 years, I presume to say they need more methodological approach to develop in terms of the human mental well-being. So for that, I try to do research in this method of the mental well-being with the spirituality connection.
Mm.
That will be very new, and then still it's an undeveloped part, but that has a potential. NASA, because they already checked all other stuff, but this is a new area, but in some area we have to transfer into scientific approach.
Right.
Another extra one I'm working on is trying to bring a animal as a companion of the astronaut. So they can take a pet as an animal astronaut to Mars if the scientist has a capability to maintain those facility for the cat. For me, I'm arguing about 2 or 3 years old dog will be one of the best companion, which bring actually a good motivation for the astronauts. Also, another theory I developing is it's good to go couple astronaut rather than single strangers each other
Mm.
because a lot of the issues, one of them is sexualities. Astronauts normally between age 30 to 40 being in space 2, 3 years without having a sexual relationship, it will cause some other issues.
Mm.
So I try to develop a hypothesis on couple astronauts as well. Thank
Mm.
you.
It's all very interesting, and all these aspects that I think many people might overlook. There's so many different aspects that play a part in one's mental well-being, their emotional well-being. These are all very important things. And
Yeah.
I think that this is, although you said it's new, you're still in researching and developing. I think this is really interesting work that you're doing. And I wasn't really knowledgeable about this at all. So I will be
Mhm.
following your work and your articles that you bring out to see how this is all developing and how this is changing. And it sounds as if the organizations that you're working with are open and receptive to this research as well. So, yeah, hopefully this will flourish and you'll have some success with your projects. So, thank you. Thank you for being here and for sharing
Mm.
this with me today. Do you have a website or a place online that people can find you and follow your work if they're interested to know more?
I have a couple of websites,
Okay.
but if they have a LinkedIn,
Uh-huh.
if I check the LinkedIn David W. Kim,
Okay.
it's more focusing on these subjects. Some other links are more generally religion related one. ANU University website, also the ORCRD, that's a sort of academic website.
Mm-hmm.
So those things, the LinkedIn is more specific on these subjects.
Okay. I will be sure to add that information to the program notes. Thank you again for your
Yeah.
time. I really
It was
appreciate you making the time to talk with me today. Thank you, David.
my pleasure, Stephanie. Thank you very much.